ran a long time on the short tracks before coming into the big time.
Now Gant, number 33, challenging Tim Richmond, number 27, for that third spot.
And they're like a lot of other guys. They're all hung up in the middle of the field fighting each other, while this man has broken clear into a long lead.
And he'd like to stretch it out as far as he can, because sooner than you might expect, he's going to be faced with traffic on this short track.
Yeah, that you come up on the back markers pretty quickly on a half mile, or in this case, this is a little bit more than a half mile, as I said earlier. It's kind of an odd shape, as we see Ricky Rudd running in that fifth spot, and there is one tough customer, as they say, Dale Earnhardt, in that sixth place in that number 15 car. And there he goes. Now, you notice the groove is changing a little bit. They can get around on the outside. And then on a short track, generally speaking, Steve, the slower cars will dip down on the apron. They will let the faster cars by on the outside rather than on the inside.
And Tim Richmond at car number 33, Harry Gant still going at it. Now, the red car number 27 is a new short track car for Richmond's team. His crew chief, Tim Brewer, was telling me they got lots of horsepower. They qualified number 3, but the car is not handling properly. And as we've heard said, you've got to have that balance of horsepower and handling on this kind of a racetrack.
It's particularly important on a racetrack like Nashville, Steve, because it's down in a bowl and there's not much wind circulation in here, and some nights this place has been just incredibly hot. It has caused enormous driver fatigue, and of course if the car's not handling, it's even worse for the driver because he's working all the way around, sawing on that wheel and fighting the automobile. Fortunately tonight it's the other way around. It's a little on the cool side, and we've got some threatening weather off there in the west, and people are a little worried about showers.
Well, this man, Darrell Waltrip, right now anyway, doesn't have very much to worry about at all, as he has a commanding lead in the early going of this Marty Robbins 420.
Not so with these guys. They're still fighting it out. And there's Bobby Allison, who's moved up from 11th starting spot into the 7th position. He's being challenged on the outside by Morgan Shepherd. Shepherd is a fine short track driver. That's his background in this business. Of course, we all know Bobby Allison can do the job on anything from a gravel road to a super speedway. He's just fantastic.
And it was Allison who last year challenged Darrell Waltrip right down to the final race of the season for the national title. Now here is Tim Richmond, number 27, and he is being sandwiched between Harry Gant, 33, and Dale Earnhardt, 15. Richmond is going to lose that third place.
Well, like I said earlier, the racetrack is starting to get some rubber on it, and people are starting to run high, 2 and 3 abreast through the corners. And look at Earnhardt way up high, down the back straightaway, and he's going to try to tuck in underneath Harry Gant into turn 3. He may get past him. Earnhardt's using the whole racetrack, and he won't hesitate. He muscles his way through a lot of traffic that way, but Harry holds him off as they run down toward turn 1.
Well, first he tried him on the inside. Now he's going to take him on the outside if he can. Number 15, the blue and yellow car, Dale Earnhardt, trying to take third place away from Harry Gant, 33. And so far this evening, the best racing is really in the middle of the pack, because this man, number 11, Darrell Waltrip, the yellow and white car, proves Brock why they might as well just give him the deed to the racetrack. He owns the place.
Well, he does right now, but I don't think anybody's prepared for him to take permanent possession, because one of the neat things about this kind of racing is its unpredictability. We could have a caution flag at any moment. You know, there are other guys that could spin out and slow everybody down. Also, we got pit stops coming up, and this racetrack is very, very hard on tires. So Darrell's going to have to stop for some fuel. He may maybe have some little mechanical problems, or somebody else may slow him down to a point where suddenly he's right back with the rest of the guys.
Well, and Darrell has led many races like this, Brock, and still not ended up in the winner's circle. So he is by no means driving right now with a total confidence factor. They are slowing the field down. The yellow flag is out, as that storm we mentioned earlier is apparently passing through right now. So these cars not equipped with rain tires, no windshield wipers. The yellow flag is out, and they're going to circle around the racetrack here to see how the weather develops. At this point, the yellow flag not a welcome sight for Darrell Waltrip, but it is for the rest of the field, because at least now Neil Bonnet, number 2, can pull right up on Waltrip's bumper.
Nashville is not one of the more famous racetracks on the NASCAR circuit, like Daytona, Talladega, or Charlotte for that matter, but it's an old fairgrounds track. In fact, the Tennessee State Fairgrounds are located right outside, and it's a fairly controversial and interesting racetrack nonetheless. And we talked earlier to some of the faster qualifiers about what they thought about this track.
Well, it's a tough track. All short track races are really a lot tougher than some of the super speedways. Here, you got a lot of cars in a small circle, and there's not enough room for everybody, and you're in a turn all the time here almost. You got very short straightaways, so you're constantly working the car through a turn. And with the traffic on the racetrack, it keeps you on your toes. You get very little time for rest like you do on a super speedway where you have a long straightaway and maybe you can relax a minute and tighten up the belts and do something like that. Here, you don't have time to do that.
You know, if you notice these corners here, you're down in a hole when you're in the middle of the corner. So it requires a good bit of horsepower to climb up out of that hole up on the straightaway on the banking. And what happens is once you get that thing jumped up on the straightaway, then you get the momentum up, and that's the reason we're seeing the big speeds at the end of the straightaway for this track. It's a combination of horsepower and handling, and it takes a total effort here to be able to win at this track.
Harry, it seems like a lot of drivers sort of carry on a love-hate relationship with Nashville. Some of them really like the racetrack, others really don't like it at all. How do you feel about it?
Well, I think it's as good as any racetrack we run on, half-mile racetrack, and I like it pretty good. We've run a lot of races up here, and it's not any worse. It's a little bit better than most of the half-miles we run on.
It's a short track, and you can't really relax physically, but mentally you can, I relax here pretty much, and you can plan a little more strategy here than you can on the super speedway.
The racing track itself, it might even be the best of all the short tracks, but the big drawback here is the pit road. Is really the worst pit road in all of NASCAR.
And when this light rain quits falling, that very pit road could be a very important factor in the outcome of the Marty Robbins 420.
To the town of Alfreel rode a stranger one fine day. Hardly spoke to folks around him, didn't have too much to say.
The year was 1959, and the car wasn't a stock car, but rather a micro midget, a small open-wheel race car that Marty raced in his early days, and it was called Big Iron. You'll remember that as one of Marty's hit songs from that period. As we continue at a slowed yellow flag pace at the Marty Robbins 420, Darrell Waltrip still in the lead. But while we're under caution and waiting for the rain to abate, let's go back up the road to that garage with Ed Bruce and talk a little bit more about Marty.
I'm standing with the man who remembers Marty Robbins from his early days of racing. He's the current race director at the Nashville International Raceway, Doyle Ford. Doyle, Marty wasn't your typical race driver, was he?
No, he was far from a typical race driver. Marty was a guy that was out to have fun and keep everything safe as possible. No, typical, never.
Well, I've heard a story about Marty's first win at the track. You were there. Could you tell us about it?
Yes. Marty had warned all of us previously that if he ever won a race, that he would take the checkered flag lap and would not bring the checkered flag back. We used to have a tradition that the winner of the race would take the checkered flag and hold it out his window and drive around the racetrack. He had told us if he ever won a race that we would never get the flag back. Our flagman at the time was very hesitant to give it to him, but the spectators demanded it more or less, and of course tradition demanded it also. So he reluctantly gave the flag to Marty, and Marty took off with it and never came back.
Just drove off the track.
Drove off, went down, locked the flag up in his truck or whatever, and...
Of course, he could have been just running late for the Opry and had to get to the show.
Well, he could have. I doubt that was the reason this time.
Sounds like he's quite a character on the track.
Absolutely. He was, you never knew what to expect out of the guy.
Out there not just to race, but to have fun, too.
Absolutely. He's the type of guy that could take a very tense situation and turn it into a lighthearted situation just with one crack.
Well, I'm sure they're probably having a lot of fun over the track right now.
Well, I'm sure that they are.
Why don't we go back and check it out?
That sounds good.